All right, here we go. I need to share my screen. All righty. Hi, everyone. I see some familiar faces. Um, my name is Kelsey Stalker. I'm the program assistant for the Fire Adapted Communities program with the Tahoe Resource Conservation District. So I know I've met a few of you at the previous um, Zoom meeting, and thank you for coming to our Workday and Action Plan uh, Zoom workshop here. So let me go ahead and present. Okie dokie. So for those of you who weren't here at the previous Zoom, um, just a little overview of the Fire Adapted Communities program. We became the regional coordinator for the Tahoe Basin in 2024 for Firewise. And since then, we've seen increases in Placer County and then El Dorado County and now on the Nevada side. So it's exciting, it's growing, and it's great to have a regional coordinator with the Tahoe RCD. As a lot of you may know, Michelle is extremely helpful in this process. Um, our funding comes from the Southern Nevada Public Lands Management Act through the Bureau of Land Management. And this funding provides services like chipping, defensible space inspections, green waste dumpsters, and education and outreach. And then the Firewise coordination, of course. So next. As I mentioned, today we'll be talking about the workday and then the action plan. So, all right. Um, as you can see in this photo here, this is Agate Bay. They had a very large workday this year, and it was very successful in removing a lot of green waste. So kudos to them. All right, and just keyboard. The things you want to be focusing on for your workday. So defensible space, big one. Education and volunteer hours. Um, and so in this photo, you can see there is an inspector here, Lake Valley Fire Defensible Space Inspector at the Pine Valley Workday. So there are a good amount of work days that are educational presentations and or meetings, meet and greets, and then people can learn about defensible space, home hardening, and then kind of go do the work on their own property if they haven't already. And then there's ways for, like, some groups may do better at kind of as a group going to certain properties. That can be an educational moment too, to just walk around. Um, and then also, like, help your neighbors who can't necessarily do the work themselves. So it's a group effort. So a little more details. The workday is extremely important in the fire adapted communities and Firewise programs. It's kind of the whole driving force. We want the community to work together to create defensible space and make sure they're prepared as a neighborhood. And there's a little equation there, and we'll get to the details of that. But you have to complete a workday, aka a National Wildfire Community Preparedness Day project. So that's quite a mouthful, but it's essentially encompassing all of that. So we want education to be a part of it, but removing dry fuels and creating defensible space, making sure homes are hardened, that's all a part of this. Um, and then recording the volunteer hours within the calendar year. So, and then with vegetation removal, you can approximate it to 1 yard per house. And then, so risk reduction investment, and this is tied to the risk assessment. And I have an Excel sheet after this that has all of these numbers. So these details are important in calculating the work and the investment that the neighborhood has put in. And then all leaders must participate in at least one educational event each year. And your workday doesn't have to happen on May 1st. It doesn't need to be right at the beginning of the year. A lot of neighborhoods like doing that because it's a great time to do the defensible space and get people thinking about wildfire preparedness. But as I said, it needs to be completed within the calendar year. And in the application, Firewise wants us to put more information under other. So if it's a different type of event, just explain what it is. That's what they're asking for. So this is that Excel sheet. And this is in the OneDrive folder that I shared. And it uses that rate on the previous page, and it calculates the value of the labor involved. And Firewise uses this for their funding, their own funding, their grants. And by the way, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Michelle will be answering questions while I move through the presentation, and then we'll take questions at the end. We'll take a short break after the workday before moving on to the action plan. Okie dokie. I also have the link for the Excel doc right in that slide. Okay. So for like someone mentioned already at the start of the Zoom, getting people involved, promoting your workday, using flyers, gathering emails, using social media, and then organizing and completing your workday and education, which can include presentations and publications. So if you reach out to the Tahoe RCD, Fire Adapted Communities team, and or your fire district, we can help provide someone to do a presentation and educational resources. And the great thing about having a fire district representative, especially here on the South Shore, the Lake Valley and City of Southlake defensible space inspectors make it a habit of going out to work days and doing defensible space inspections the day of. They will walk with people in the neighborhood to their property and or drive, depending on how far it is, either one, and do a defensible space inspection. And again, these are educational inspections. They're focused on what you can do to improve your house, and they are not meant to be scary. We will cite you, all of that. They're really just trying to get more people on board and aware of what needs to be done. So another option is setting up a meet and greet station at the leader's house. A lot of work days have been like this. They have a table of materials, people to answer questions, maybe do a little presentation on home hardening, whatever you want to share with the group. And then you can answer questions people have. You can record hours, find out, you can gather emails. So it's a great opportunity to get everybody on board, letting people know they can get defensible space inspections, and coming together and sort of answering each other's questions about home hardening and sharing ideas and what's worked for you. Okay, so the document on the left, this is provided by Firewise, and it is a method of calculating the hours worked. Um, you can use this, or you can use the Excel sheet that is in here. Um, whatever works for you. We like the Excel sheet because it has an equation in there that just calculates it up for you. Um, and then on the right here, this is what it looks like when you fill in your hours in the Firewise application. So you don't need to be specific to the point of all of, you don't need to fill in all of these necessarily. CAL FIRE requires at least two types of work hours, but NFPA does not. So CAL FIRE is a little more, they want to know a little more of what you're doing. So that is required for California applications. And then here's just a little bit about how the Tahoe RCD's Fire Adaptive Communities program can help with the workday, provide publications, presentations, resources, and then connect fire districts with chipping services, defensible space inspectors, to workdays. They can help. And then there's certain circumstances where high school groups will come out and help out in a workday. So we're always trying to work with high schoolers to get them invested in defensible space as well. So reach out to the Tahoe RCD, and if you want help with your workday, and we'll see what we can do for you. We also have banners, and I'm sure some of you maybe have some or have seen them around, the blue banners. And we have lanyards for neighborhood leaders. So please reach out. We have materials and a little bit of swag. Um, we can provide example flyers and letters. Um, and you don't need proof of the work. You can collect hours via email at the table during your workday. Um, and I even saw at a recent workday, they had a little magnet. They made their own little, it's kind of like a business card, and it has a QR code linked to a Google Doc where they fill in the hours they've worked. And so the little magnet just goes on the fridge, and they handed these out at their workday. So I thought that was a really great way to get people to be able to submit their hours whenever, when they see it on their fridge.
That's good.
So here's just some photos. I'm sure you all have seen these educational materials. These are just it varies. If you're wondering what your workday needs to look like, the best examples are just custom to what your neighborhood needs. So if you're just starting out, the goal is to get the word out and get people to come and talk and come together for maybe the first time. And then get educational materials, and so then they can go off and tell others. But then, as you can see, some are huge community meetings with multiple fire district representatives, presenters. So it really is just about what your community needs. And just another mention, barbecues and food related work days are very successful. So if you're looking for ways to lure people in, food and especially barbecues are a great way to bring people together. But that is about it for the workday. And now we can pause for just a few minutes of questions if anybody has any questions. I see the chat has been chatting, so that's great. Thank you, Michelle. All right. If there are no um, questions that Michelle hasn't already touched base on, I will keep it moving. So um, once you have completed your workday, next steps, action plan. So doesn't necessarily have to be in that order, but like I said, within the calendar year, the workday needs to happen. But the action plan is the final step of the application process for Firewise, and it ties it all together. And this is the first page of the action plan. And I, again, have this linked in the OneDrive folder. In this, again, your action plan it comes from your risk assessment. So the goals must include the recommendations found on the page 9 of the risk assessment document. So please reference that. It's best if it's exact. They want it to be very clear. And so that has a lot of great information. There's some examples of actions like distribute Firewise brochures and information, hang wildfire preparedness banner, attend fire adapted community education events. So they can look different depending on what your goals are, but education is a huge one. So here are the different areas. Education and outreach, huge. Home hardening. We want to make sure that that our neighbors and ourselves are all taking those into account. Fuels reduction and evacuation planning. And some recommendations for the action plan. So here's just an example, a couple examples. If the risk you listed on your risk assessment was that 80% of the houses have lattice covered decks, then the recommendation in your action plan would be to remove, clean, or block in decks. So perhaps replacing the wooden lattice with metal mesh. And if you don't like the look of it, people have been painting over the metal mesh to make it the same color as their deck. And also there's ways people have been sort of rigging removable mesh to go around decks. So people get creative. And then again, if the risk you listed is that 75% of the foundation vents are a 1/4 inch instead of an 1/8 inch, the recommendation would be to provide options, educate on replacing with 1/8 of an inch meshing. And you can talk to people about that at a work day. I'm gonna go back actually. A little more on the recommendations. So your fire district and committee will complete the written component of the risk assessment and provide the recommendations, but it's the goal of the community, the fire adapted community and Firewise neighborhood is to be fully educated and to share it with each other. And every observation must be reviewed in the summary. And we've been getting help from a CAL FIRE representative on the new action plan document, and Michelle works very closely with them to make sure that the applications we do are successful. So that because it just makes it more complicated, and we want all of our applications to go through. So he was suggesting to refrain from putting exactly how many homes, even if it's approximate, in the brief description. It's not required, and if it doesn't exactly match the risk assessment, it can be rejected because of that. He suggested saying our community is located within, and more describing the setting and the place, because you don't need that information. Another suggestion of his was that it's kind of tricky with CAL FIRE. Their expectation is that compliance is already met. So for the wording, even if compliance isn't currently met technically, the idea is that in CAL FIRE's mind, compliance is met. It just needs to be worked on, continued to be worked on and maintained. So this can be a little confusing, but Michelle will help you walk through this. So essentially, you can't say that you're out of compliance in the document, but you can say things like improve or continue to work on these things, which you will be doing. So yeah, there you go. Okay. As I mentioned, the information is based on the risk assessment, and the action plan would start in 2026 for this current group. And it would go 2026 to the end of 2028. Firewise is looking to see that you're completing and building on actions each year to address and reduce the risks in your neighborhood. And each section must include 3 actions for education and outreach, home hardening, defensible space and fuels reduction, and evacuation planning and wildfire preparation. So those are the categories. Okay. And also with the action plan document, it must be the CAL FIRE form that you either get from the application or the one that I've linked in the OneDrive folder. Want to make sure that it saves correctly. It's been issues with that. So the idea is that you're sending out the action plan to your committee. So review the risk assessment with them, and then have their input, and then send it out to them to keep people informed. Based on your neighborhood needs and support, you can decide what is realistic together as a committee. List your actions on the action plan following the guidelines. It breaks it down in the document. And then you'll focus on those actions for the next 3 years. And again, you're working towards compliance. You're working to maintain compliance, not implying that you're out of compliance. And it's best to start with the easiest things, the things that make the most sense, low-hanging fruit, what you can do quickly and easily. Think about what will get the most support from your neighbors and engage people. Review the publications, examples, and complete the community description, which can match the risk assessment. And as much as possible, you want those two to be on the same page, having the same information. And then once you have your action plan done and your work day done and everything is recorded, you can submit the application. And of course, once Michelle has looked through it, so you just, again, as it says here, please don't submit the application until Michelle has reviewed it and double checked. It's challenging to do on your own. And this is why we have a team. And this is why Michelle's doing the work she's doing, making sure that our Firewise neighborhoods are being successful. And new applications are reviewed on Thursdays, but it may take longer if high volume and if it's around the renewal period. It's reviewed by the county coordinator and then the state. So it's a long process. So we want to make sure the submission of all the initial materials are looking good. And then there is the yearly application renewal. So you need to renew your Firewise recognition every year to maintain that recognition status. And the renewal date this year is November 22nd. And again, it's similar things that you are already recording to start off, but education you've done as a community, vegetation removed, risk reduction, investment. So that little calculation saw earlier. All right. We're at the end of the action plan portion. And so this would be the time to ask any questions that are lingering that you haven't sent in the chat, or mention comments. If folks have done a workday or started your action plan, love to hear how that's going for you, how it went, what's working, and what questions you might have. So open it up to the floor.
I do want to point out one thing for the action plan, because I don't think there's anywhere on here from Nevada, but Scott. So we do use the CAL FIRE action plan just to maintain consistency, and also because it's really precise and looks at different areas that need the wildfire reduction risk. And so I just like to use that. And it's much easier. Then we have meetings and things when we're discussing this. It's a lot clearer and we're all on the same page. It does say California, though. I can't change that.
Awesome. Thank you for mentioning that. All right. Well, we don't need to keep this going if we answered all your questions, but I appreciate everyone showing up today. Yeah, I recorded this and I will put it up in that folder. So if you haven't grabbed that link out of the chat, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, I think Michelle's gonna send it out. But I appreciate y'all for coming. And again, please continue to talk to Michelle and have open communication about this process. We want you to be successful. So, yeah.
I had one more thing to add. So the reason I ask you to review the action plans, we've been doing this for 2 years. I just want to make this clear. If you send in your application and we have not reviewed it and there is one tiny error, it will take 2 weeks to get to that point they find the error. It will take another 2 weeks for us to get it put through and sorted out, possibly another 2 weeks for them to review again. So instead of a 2-week process, you've now made it a 6-week process. And I don't want that to happen to you. So let me see it before you hit that button.
So, Michelle, this is Jeff Engerman. I'm assuming you don't want to get all these plans at the 15th of November, right?
No, please do not do that either. So the renewal is for groups who are in existence and they have to submit an updated version of this. It's a much simpler version by November 22nd. You guys are open to do that at any point, but as we mentioned, we do want it in by November, preferably because we know that's going to help with your insurance.
Sure, that's fine. Thanks.
Alrighty. If there are no other comments or questions, I think I'll wrap it up. But I hope everybody has a great rest of your day, and I wish you all luck in your Firewise applications. Thank you for coming.
All right, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
No problem.